Hi, everyone. My name is Anawat Sisomsak. I am a product marketing manager here at Veritas. Also, your moderator for this session. Just a quick reminder, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the QA or the chat. In this topic, in this session, we're going to talk about ransomware resiliency. And we have three great speakers with joining us today to talk about that subject. Director of Product Management, Anna Simpson, Product Manager, Dan Sandine, and TME, Dawar Wilkinson. Let's kick it off.
Thank you for everyone for joining our session on ransomware resiliency. And really, ransomware resiliency begins with a backup plan. Ransomware is really taking front and center in the minds of many of our customers today. Really, it's a global pandemic in terms of ransomware. By 2021, we estimate the damages within ransomware will be as much as $20 billion. That's $2.50 for every man, woman, and child on the planet. And those are just the direct costs. There's indirect costs associated with ransomware, and that could add up to as much as $6 trillion, the FBI estimates. So with the rise of ransomware, Veritas is looking to seek to better understand how our customers need to protect their environment, detect their environment, and recover from ransomware if it were to strike them. So our strategy is really around protect, detect, and recover. And we want to ensure that businesses are resilient from economic crisis, global pandemics, malware, and provide resiliency from ransomware. And to do this, we've demonstrated through a lot of our messaging, which draws on the NIST cybersecurity framework. And it highlights how Veritas supports customers in the protection of their IT systems. So first we begin with protection. Protection is a proactive approach to making sure your data is secure as it possibly can be. These are the steps you take in advance of getting hit with ransomware. This is where you're hardening your environments and you're practicing and taking advantage of immutability. Next, we talk about detection. We want to tell you what you don't know, what hasn't been protected in some cases, and then give you some insight into the anomalous behavior that may be occurring that will give you an indication that ransomware is occurring in your environment. And then we want to talk about recover. And this is really where you apply the best practices, the best backups, or the best recovery solution to make sure that your recovery is at scale and automated. So these are the things, these three pillars are the ones that we believe that will help you to protect your environment and recover at scale for your backup environment. So now I'd like to introduce Dan Sandin, who's going to take you through the protection pillar.
Thanks, Doward. Let's talk a little bit about protect. So when it comes to security, we've taken all of our security functionality and kind of put them into four pillars. One is identity and access management, commonly referred to in the industry as IAM. We have a lot of these controls that we're growing every release with additional functionality. So it's controls like how you log in with your password. It's role-based access control, which we call RBAC. We also have single sign-on now available within the web UI, and you'll see it soon in the Java UI. And all of those functionality and to make sure that only the people are in your backup system that should be, and you're auditing who's doing what within your application. So it's really important to make sure that you have those controls in place so you know who's doing what, and the rogue actor doesn't get a common password and log into the system and start doing negative things. The second main security control is data encryption. So ransomware, oftentimes people are aware that ransomware encrypts your data. But what it also can do is steal your data and then threaten to make it public. There was a recent school community in Arizona that they actually had all the grades of their students, for example, published on the World Wide Web. So it's really important that if a bad actor does get your data, they can't read it. So we've got a lot of controls in place to encrypt your data while it's at rest with our MSDP technology. And then we also encrypt data while it's in transit, and we protect your management layer data there too. So there's a lot of things we do today, and then we're continuing to improve control, make those controls deeper from a security perspective over time. The new one that we worked a lot on this year is our immutable and indelible storage. So immutability means you cannot change, and indelibility means you can't delete, and we support both. I got a slide on that I'll talk about in a second. And then finally, the last control is just overall system hardening. What we're trying to do here is make sure that all of the logical attack vectors are prevented. So all the authentication methods making sure people can't, load BIOSes that aren't theirs, for example. So we're trying to prevent any kind of logical attack vector into the solution, not just the backup software, but also including the appliance solution. So we're looking at it from all different attack vectors, and we're making sure that we're protecting your solution unless something happens to be right next to your hardware and can take a hammer to it, for example. So let's talk a little bit about immutability. So on the immutability side, our whole solution, we worked with our net backup teams, our dedupe MSDP teams, as well as our Flex teams to create a full solution for you that supports immutability and indelibility. So with net backup 8.301 and newer, as well as our Flex 2.0 and newer solutions, we have a full immutable story for you. Specifically now with the 5150 and the 5340, you'll see the 5250 coming soon. We have a solution where you manage the policies in that backup. We make sure those policies meet Flex capabilities, and then you can start sending policy or images to that storage in immutability for 2 weeks, 6 months, 3 weeks, whatever you desire for that specific policy. We've also added a compliance clock inside of the Flex platform to own that duration. So that way, if a bad actor gets into net backup master and wants to start messing with durations in the master system, you're still protected on the Flex platform because Flex owns that duration of that immutability. And so we've got a secure compliance clock that makes sure that that storage can stay untouched and unchanged or deleted for whatever that duration you initially asked it for. We also have really good options for you. We have an enterprise option and a compliance option. If you want the most rigorous from a security standpoint option, that would be your compliance option. That option doesn't give you any way to delete that storage early or modify that storage early. And then we have an enterprise mode where almost all methods on deleting that storage early are there, with the exception of, for example, at an image level, we have a two persona process where an MSDP admin can release a immutable lock, and then a net backup admin then can go and request an early expiry. So we've done a lot of work to give you flexibility. So if you think compliance a little bit overkill and you're a little bit nervous about that, we have an enterprise mode that you might want to take a look at. We've also gone through a rigor of a third-party assessment with Cohasset Associates. They're a well-known immutability assessment agency, and we've worked with them during the duration of the development process this year to make sure that we were building this immutable functionality that would really meet your needs. If you're not a Flex customer and you happen to be using third-party storage, we have designed net backup to be agnostic to immutable storage. So from a net backup master perspective, we can talk to third-party storage or our own storage and say, hey, do you support immutability? And if storage says yes, and that integration is complete, then we can start creating policies for it. So in January, EMC should be done through our testing with our HCL lab. So feel free to look at the HCL list and verify they're on there. And then you'll see the versions that we support with EMC retention lock capabilities. And we're also working with NEC, and they should be available in Q1 this year. And then finally, we're working with some other vendors. So I expect a couple other vendors to get up and running this calendar year. So we're really trying to create an immutable storage, regardless of the storage vendor you're looking for. Some customers have asked us for S3 and cloud storage immutability. That is on the roadmap, and you'll see some stuff later on this year relative to that. So what I'm going to do now is I want to turn it over to Anna, and we'll move off of protection and we'll start talking about detect.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm going to take it from here. I'm going to talk about detect. When we talk about detect within Veritas, we are really talking about insight-driven detection. And we can do this in a few different ways. So the first is APTAR, and APTAR is essentially IT or infrastructure analytics. It gives us visibility into both storage as well as data protection, meaning that we understand exactly what is being protected. The second part of insights is really data insight. And here we are actually talking about file level insights. So we get an understanding of the files themselves. Could they be ransomware? But also who is accessing those files. So we can look at activity as well and look for anomalies. So let's take a look at APTAR first of all. So really when we talk about APTAR, it's giving you visibility into what is being protected. We create a baseline and then we can alert to changes in that baseline. And those alerts can be sent to ServiceNow as an example. We have an integration which can help sort of expedite the remediation if an attack occurs. APTAR actually has a number of different dashboards, and this is a ransomware risk dashboard. You'll see here a number of different things which have been highlighted. A few things that I want to point out is we do create a baseline for backups. We also are able to identify false positives within this baseline, and then we can alert to deviations. So again, that's where that ServiceNow integration can really help. The second is that we actually are able to highlight any failures of backups by application. And this is a really key differentiator. APTAR has the ability to essentially tie an application to a host, databases, etc. So when we have that visibility, we can quickly highlight areas of risk, particularly if it's not being protected properly or those backups actually fail. And finally, because APTAR has visibility into both data protection and storage, we can look for unprotected data stores. And that's obviously a key area of risk. And then obviously we can create protection plans to actually ensure that data is protected in case there is an attack. Now let's take a look at data insight. So data insight is focused on item level visibility. So looking actually at the data which is residing on that storage. So data insight can actually investigate data in a few different ways. The first is around metadata. So we can look at things like file extensions, and we can identify any known ransomware file types as an example, and bubble these up to the top for further investigation. Data insight also leverages the Veritas information classifier, so that can help also label files as potential ransomware. And we can do that again by the file extension, or we could also be potentially identifying potential ransom notes, leveraging a policy which exists within the classification engine itself. And then finally, data insight gives visibility into access as well. So we can look at who is accessing particular files, and using social networking as well as risk profiling, we can identify a risk score for an individual. So there, what we're looking at is what people are accessing, how frequently they're accessing it. And if we detect an anomaly or deviation from their usual activity, we can alert to that. And a good example of that is inside a threat. If you understand what's happening as it's happening, then obviously you can remediate faster. And finally, with data insight, we also have templates to assist in that alerting process. So finally, let's take a look at APTAR with data insight. So what we're looking at here is a dashboard which has been created within APTAR, but we've actually ingested data from data insight. So here you'll see that we've been able to correlate classifications from data insight. So you'll see the ransomware tags within there. But we're actually able to map this back to things that APTAR can discover as well. So things like the primary storage and the protection which has been applied to it through a data protection solution like NetBackup. And that's really important because if we identify ransomware within the environment, then this can help identify us a place of recovery. And that could either be with, say, a snapshot or obviously within the backup itself. So really, with Detect, from a Veritas perspective, it's all insight driven, because once we have those insights, we can identify the spread and also remediate as quickly as possible. And that's a good segue. I'm going to pass it back over to Dan for Recover.
Thanks, Ann. I appreciate it. Let's take the final pillar that we're talking about relative to ransomware resiliency, and that's really recover, which is NetBackup's bread and butter. It's why you buy the solution. So when you need to, the data is available for you. We can meet your RTOs and RPOs and then get you back up to where you need to be. The main difference here is at scale, and it could be a totally different scale than just a simple or small outage, or maybe just a DR event in one data center. So you might have heard of something called the VRP. It stood for Veritas Resiliency Platform. We've taken that resiliency platform and put it into NetBackup, and it's now part of your license and maintenance agreement with NetBackup, and it's now just called NetBackup Resiliency. First message is, if you haven't looked at that, I highly recommend you contact your SE and your sales team, and they can go through this solution with you. But at a high level, what it allows you to do is automate and orchestrate at scale, and you can have all that preparation done before it actually happens. And so, for example, you can create virtual business services. You can create a resiliency plan. It allows you to create these plans and really make all the manual steps that you have to do with, if you took just traditional recovery, but tie them all together in an orchestrated environment to automate them. And then even on the networking side, you can pre-configure networking on how to network, based on how you want to recover. And all that's there for you, and you can test that in a non-disruptive way. So resiliency plan is, or resiliency is really intended to help you meet those RTOs and RPOs at scale, because normally those are easy to do one at a time. But now, if you're talking about a good chunk of your applications down, still trying to make those RPOs and RTOs with that automation. So that's our resiliency platform for you. The last thing it can do is it can even, as part of the orchestration piece of this, we can even tie up to disinfecting. We don't do disinfecting ourselves, but let's say ransomware was in your environment and you can't go back too far and you want to verify that the ransomware is gone, you might want to disinfect it. It does allow you to stop, hit a API, you can script to whatever solution you want to use today and do that checking prior to re-entering in your environment. So it has that kind of capabilities as well. So you can really kind of fine-tune it to some solutions you may be using today. So that's resiliency platform, and that's in addition to all of the stuff we do and have been doing for quite some time. So continuous data protection, an awesome solution when it's really, really important. You're having your RPOs as tight as possible, and you just can't lose data for a certain workload, for example. Instant access, where you need to recover VMs or SQL databases, at scale. We can do, I think, up to 50 with instant access fairly quickly. You will see some technology in our summer release that we call, it's using CBT technology, change block technology, that can recover a lot of VMs very, very fast as well into your production environment. So we are making some enhancements in addition to already good functionality with instant access today. We also have snapshotting technology with your on-prem or cloud snapshots. We also have bare metal restore. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of having extra hardware and you need to recover on hardware that might have been infected, and you might need to really start from scratch. With bare metal restore, you have that ability today where it saves all the configuration and versions that you're using. So when you need to get back to that old hardware, you don't have any gotchas on the restore process. And then finally, of course, traditional recovery. NetBackup's had that for a long time, and that's always available at your fingertips as well. It's all about having the options that meet your RPO and RTO objectives, and now it's all about doing that at scale. So with all these options available to you, we hope we have you covered, and we'll continue to invest heavily to make sure we maintain our leadership position in helping you recover, especially when ransomware hits. Yeah, so with that said, what I'll do is I'll turn it back over to Doward, and he'll recap the 3 pillars again, and we really appreciate your time. Doward.
Thanks, Dan. So in conclusion, I want to talk a little bit about the Veritas Enterprise Data Services Platform. And this is our overall platform associated with protection, detection, and recovery of your environment. So we've talked a little bit about protect, we talked a little bit about detect, we talked about a little bit about recovery. There's many more aspects to the Enterprise Data Services Platform. And so just keep in mind that you'll always be protected with Veritas. Your data will always be recoverable. Trust that just works. This is market-leading reliability and performance to recover your applications when you need them at scale. Furthermore, the Enterprise Data Services Platform future-proofs your investment. NetBackup and Veritas are continually investing in the environment, in your backup solution, to make sure that you have the best-in-class data protection, whether you're at the edge, the core, or in the cloud. And of course, we want to reduce your complexity and reduce your costs associated with recoverability. So we continue to invest in those areas to make sure that you can recover quickly, but in a cost-effective way. And then manage risks. Really, that's really what this is all about, is to manage your risk environment. And with Enterprise Data Services Platform, managing your risk is first and foremost in our minds so that you can be protected from ransomware, global pandemic, and any other issues that might crop up in your environment that need to have fast recovery, and recovery that means the ability to recover what is important at that time. So I'm here with Dan and Anna to answer any of your questions about the NetBackup ransomware solution.
Wow, what great information there. So let's open up the form for questions. Feel free to type them in the chat, or yeah, so let's see. I have questions here. So let's do this one. So Dan, so there's an update, EMC data domain, OSD. Can you tell us a little more about the effects of the retention lock and OSD immutable storage?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The recording has a little bit of dated information and things are changing fast. So we have been working with Data Domain for quite some time on certifying their update to the OSD plugins. So NetBackup Master can drive policies and images into their immutable storage and manage what's immutable and what's non-immutable. And we have finished certification of the first plugin, which is the 7.0.50 platform with 8301. Had some a little bit issues on the 9.0 side, but with 8.301, it is certified and ready to go. So that's an update there, and we'll continue to work with the folks over at Dell EMC to update to some of their newer platforms, to 7.4, 7.5, and those kinds of things. So that's a work in progress. So I just wanted to give the community an update on that.
Cool, thanks. That's great information. So I guess this kind of segues into our next question. Can you explain a little more about MBU and the interoperabilities with immutable storage?
Sure. So the way we've kind of designed NetBackup Master is to be agnostic, as I said, on storage. So, for example, we want NetBackup Master to interact with immutable storage in the same way, whether it's a Flex platform, whether it's an EMC Data Domain platform, or future platforms, because we will be expanding immutable storage capabilities, because we want NetBackup Master to be your single platform regardless of storage location. So the way that works is NetBackup interacts with storage and confirms it can understand that, hey, this is immutable storage. If the storage has a minimum and a maximum, it can say, hey, what's the minimum for this storage unit? What's the maximum? And then policies can be driven based on that. So if you've got interim storage that you just want them in to be a day and the max to be a week, storage can be configured that way. And then when you set up policies, it'll verify the policies match those requirements when you direct the STU and attach the policies to that. That's the same thing that works with the Flex platform. So there's whether it's a minimum or max, so whether it's going through the OST, which is both a Flex platform or a data domain platform, or future OST partners that connect. So we think it's a great way for protection, because storage really owns the protection and the duration of that immutability and indelibility. So Net Backup doesn't own that anymore when it comes to immutable storage. And the reason why that is we're trying to protect your data. So if someone takes over a Net Backup admin credential and tries to delete that storage early, we expect storage to delete or to ignore that request. And if someone hacks into the APIs and goes that route and tries to do the same thing, we expect storage to ignore that request and fail that request. So we think it's a really good way to handle security relative to storage. It gives our storage platform, flexibility in how we want to manage that immutability and create differentiation on that security as well.
Excellent. Thanks for answering that, Dan. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up. I think I'm going to say thank you to our three presenters, Anna, Dan, and Doward. Thank you so much. This has been a very informational session. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for joining.